Right. Going live. Woo! Oh, man. Give me 1 second, guys. Just going to pull up my stream here on this end. You hear a little bit of noise in the background. I'm just prepping dinner. All right. So, welcome in, guys. My name's Steve Pintato. I am the host of the Fantasy Coaches podcast and a member of Unwrap Sports Network. Coming to you today once again with my 32 teams and 32 days. If you haven't known, I've been, obviously, the name's in this title. I've been doing streams on every single team, doing a little bit of fantasy analysis, a little outtake for 2020 season. Sometimes we get into some keeper and dynasty at times, but we're just going through all the teams. We're about halfway through now. I'm pretty tired, so it's been a lot of work to get this going. So thank you guys for listening in tonight. So we're going to get right into it. And obviously, like I said, it's about the Minnesota Vikings. And the Minnesota Vikings, they lost a couple people, but they also gained new players on their team this year. And it all comes down to Kirk Cousins. If this team is going to make the leap, I think one of two things have to happen. Kirk Cousins needs to be on point like he was last year. Maybe he actually throws a little bit more. I mean, he threw for 444 attempts last year. It's like one of the worst in his career. I mean, he's a 550 guy all day long. And he has, top 10 quarterback upside in his career. So it's been a little strange that he hasn't really performed that way here in Minnesota. They've kind of cut it down, as we all know, with Dalvin Cook and running the ball. So he's limited on what he's able to do as a quarterback. But, he's a better probably QB2 and Superflexes because he's QB2 or better 10 times out of 16 games. So you really can't beat that. But just know there's going to be times, and we've seen it last year, where he throws the ball 4 times and that's it. It happened, maybe it was 10 times all game. It was insane. And that's kind of what you're getting at times with Kirk Cousins, but you're also getting solid performance as well. I just don't know if the receiving core is enough to keep him afloat. You lost Stephon Diggs. That's a big blow, though. You get Justin Jefferson, but I don't think he's on that level to Diggs level yet. Hopefully they may use a little bit more of a 2 QB system, 2 tight end system with Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. to get him more involved. And, of course, they're going to continue the run game. So where you see Kirk Cousins at this coming season, I think he is he's a top 20 quarterback, borderline top 20 quarterback. Isn't something I want to go into my 10 to 12-man league draft with a quarterback as my QB1. I can't see it. I don't see enough upside in his game. He's going to throw the ball enough to be that. And that's kind of what you're getting with Kirk Cousins in a nutshell. So, again, if you take him, he's like a late round pick, I think, 14, 15. If you choose to take him in that range, I think you're okay at that point. But just know there's going to be times where he just kind of doesn't do as much, and he obviously doesn't have a rushing floor. So it's like give or take, hoping that his attempts go back up compared to what they've been in the last few years. Hey, Messy Best, what's going on? Going over to the running game. As we all know, I'm just going to mention a guy like Mike Boone. We saw him last year at the end of the season kind of turn up. Just a name to remember in your head in case someone gets hurt in this Minnesota core, because he'll probably have some kind of role at that point. I mean, at the end of the season, I think he had over 100 yards and 2 big performances when Dalvin Cook and Madison went down. So this guy can do something when he has the game on his side. But again, he's not a draftable guy. Alexander Madison is the first guy I want to really mention, who's a really candidate to be a top 10 round selection. He had a pleasant surprise last year. He managed 100 carries as a backup. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry. While he didn't light up the fantasy birds per se, he managed to make some RB3 numbers at times last year. But he's probably one of the best handcuffs in football right now to Dalvin Cook almost. And, he's a bruiser type of back, can kind of pound the ball. Not very speedy, but, can break tackles. Like I said, we didn't really get a chance to see him if he got the full workload when Dalvin Cook went down, because he got hurt himself. But you kind of take him in that as a first or second RB backup to your starters and maybe flex option, because you want to grab a guy who will perform at times, and he may be used more because they want to maybe limit Dalvin Cook a little bit more if that's the case. Or if Dalvin Cook gets hurt, which, again, we'll talk about him in a second, but Alexander Madison would be basically an RB1 at that point. So I think the best time to get him is in that 9 to 10 range. If you're the Dalvin Cook owner and your 2020 drafts this year, you got to get Madison. You have to, unfortunately, because you're taking a big risk taking Cook, and we'll get to him in a second, but you have to have his backup because he's going to perform real big. And if you want to grab the backup, if you don't have Dalvin Cook and use it as a trade bait later on, or just have an additional RB1, that 9 to 10 range, I think at that point in the draft, you're getting your bench players, is a great way to go because he has tremendous upside. I just that, he may not see it he's not a flexible guy on a week-to-week basis, but he's got that upside to be an RB1 in a situation where his starter is very frequently hurt. And that kind of gets us into Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, man, he surely broke out last year finally. He was a dominant force last year. I mean, he was on par with Christian McCaffrey at times last year for the number 1 RB slot. But his biggest knock is that he's missed 22 games now in his career, and that's a serious injury, and it's just not one, it's multiple injuries he's gone out for over the years. He has yet to play in a fantasy championship game. So, and Madison, is going to be backing him up. He may be more involved to help Dalvin Cook not carry such a big workload. Stephon Diggs is gone. You may see more coverage stacked boxes next year, though it could also lead to maybe more targets because he had 63 last year. There's a chance he maybe gets up to that 80, 85 this year if he can stay healthy. Gary Kubiak will be his OC now at a full-time basis to use that West Coast blocking scheme that really actually helps out Dalvin Cook a lot. So it was pretty good. And obviously we saw last year when Dalvin Cook was healthy and in the right scheme, he can perform. And he had multiple 100 yards games last year and was just a dominant force when you got him in drafts. But where do you take him now? Where do we see him this year? He's probably an RB1 still. As long as he can stay healthy, he's an RB1. But where you draft him, personally, people have him going as high as pick 5 overall. To me, I think he's a late first. Realistically, I probably wouldn't want to draft him until the second round. If I have a 12th pick or whatever in the draft, I'll probably draft him with one of my 2 picks. If in the 10, I may not. And that's kind of what you get with Dalvin Cook. Is like you take a big upside with him having an amazing season, but you also have to take that risk that he had 22 games and 3 seasons now. That's 36 games in 3 years. That's 22 of them he's missed. That's not really good. So to me, I don't like taking a risk at a running back who's got major injury concerns like that. So you take him with that risk, but he can perform big when he gets there. It just depends what kind of value you want to get him at pick 5. I don't see the value at pick 5. At pick 13, 14, yeah, I start to see the value in a guy like that. But, you have to, if you're going to take the risk, you got to get Madison. And while he could perform good for you, he may not be there come playoff time. So going over to the wide receivers now, BC Johnson, rookie last year, kind of came on a little bit near the end. Didn't really do anything in particular. He had one game that was an wide receiver 2. He had some success. He had 4 straight games with at least 4 receptions or 35 yards. He didn't really do much when, Thielen was down as much as we would like him to do. He has a chance to bounce back because he does play more of that outside perimeter role. So he could end up seeing some kind of value to his game, but until that happens, kind of more of an undrafted guy. KJ Osborne, a guy out of Miami, real fast, deep threat ability to his game, can win in any spot on the field, play out of the slot a lot of times, dynamic runner in space, fearless over the middle of the area, got great hands, ball skills are outstanding. He can track and adjust in the air. Again, he's not a big guy to break tackles and things like that, but he wasn't really too productive in college. He's more of that special teamer or kind of package guy where they get him the ball in space and let him kind of run with it because that's what he kind of does, I think, best overall. His role this year, he could be thrown on the outside at times because of his speed, but isn't right now a guy I'm really worth drafting. Maybe a taxi squad guy in Dynasty right now. It wouldn't be a bad shot to see maybe we get some kind of production in the future. And Thielen is a little bit older, but he's probably going to be on a special teams basis most of this coming season. Tajay Sharp, had promise coming out and came out in 2016. So we're almost 5 years out of that now. Possession receiver, had some upside, had a decent rookie season, 41 receptions, 500 yards and 2 touchdowns. Over the last 3 seasons, kind of dealt with injuries and in production, just inconsistent production with his game. Obviously bad quarterback play Last year, I mean, he had one game where he had 5 for 69 and 2 touchdowns, but he is another guy who could have maybe a slight deep sleeper kind of value to him. But again, isn't someone I'm worth drafting until I can see the target production come from these players. I don't see them having a big role with it, especially with this being a run first team. Hey, Janny, thanks for joining. If I said your name wrong, I'm sorry. Justin Jefferson, though. Obviously, we know Justin Jefferson. I mean, LSU guy, he's going to fill in for Stephon Diggs. He's probably going to see the week 1 start. I mean, this guy's got smooth route running ability, good change of speed during his routes, keeping defenders guessing. Able to have some big protection after the catch. Isn't afraid to go up and get it with defenders. Also a strong blocker, reliable hand kind of guy. Needs to get a little bit better on his separation at the next level, especially those mechanics. But again, he's going to see probably almost close to 100 targets, I think, this coming season. It just depends where he plays, because obviously out of the slot last year, he was amazing. I mean, he had over 100 targets, 100 catches last year out of the slot, but also if Adam Thielen plays the slot. So it's going to be interesting how they kind of line these guys up. Jefferson, to me, I think is that wide receiver 4, high-end wide receiver 4 with upside to be better if he can get into the right situation, if he gets enough targets to do it. And I think he could in this offense here with the lack of talent on offense, so especially in the pass-catching game. So he's definitely in that round 10 to 11 range where if I have my 3 receivers, I wouldn't mind getting him because he's going to have at least PPR, I think, value. Maybe not standard, but PPR value for him this coming year. Adam Thielen coming off injury, but we know Adam Thielen has been a guy who can perform really well. Obviously, 2018 was a big season for him. Last year, again, he dealt with injury, but he was wide receiver 9 through the first 6 games. He also had 5 touchdowns, very consistent. Obviously, Kirk Cousins' most trusted target. He had 4 more red zone targets than Stephon Diggs. I mean, he had 15 red zone receptions in 2018, and he was probably going to beat that this coming season. He was on pace to do it. And unfortunately, the season didn't work out. Injuries kind of lingered all year round, so he didn't play as much. But you saw in the playoffs, he was healthy, and in the 2 playoff games, he had 12 receptions for 179 yards. He's going to be their wide receiver 1 this year. I think people are undervaluing him coming off injury right now, but he's going to be a great wide receiver, low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 that you're going to probably get in round 3 to 4, maybe 5 if he slips. Is definitely someone I'm willing to target this year because he's going to see most of the targets, probably close to 140 this year, and he's going in not even close in that wide receiver 1 conversation at this moment. So Adam Thielen is a guy I would willing to target in drafts this year. And going over the tight ends real quick, Irv Smith Jr., someone who I'm really high on, coming out of college, standout, major upside as a receiver and a tight end, kind of can do both, and that's great. He's got the top end speed for a tight end, create mismatches with defenders. Again, wasn't really too fantasy relevant, had a couple, tight end 2 performances, but what are they sometimes? They could be like 5 points sometimes. But he had very similar stats to Kyle Rudolph, who is the starter, similar, same snap counts. They were basically on par playing at the same time together. And again, with the lack of wide receivers, and Justin Jefferson's a rookie, Irv Smith may be relied on to be more on the field. And Minnesota played a lot of 2 tight end sets last year. So Irv Smith could be a guy you could be a weekly waiver wire add onto your team that you're going to want at some point during the season if he can take over Kyle Rudolph, because he's just the more athletic, better pass catching player right now. It's just that Rudolph is a veteran and he is also very good as well. So, but again, the touchdowns didn't fall his way. But if he had the 4 touchdowns and Rudolph only had the 2, we'd be talking about Irv Smith as a really good tight end this year. But where you're getting him, I think he is a late round pick. If you want to take a shot on a guy, I think who could end up having that Mark Andrews-like kind of season if everything kind of goes his way, which it could. And that's why I think he's a good late round pick on his end over there. Kyle Rudolph, again, he doesn't really do it for me. He's been a top 15 tight end over the last 5 seasons, top 10 from 2016 to 2018, 2019. I mean, he only was relevant when Adam Thielen was unfortunately off the field or if he had the touchdowns. And if he wasn't, before Adam Thielen went down, he was tight end 48. After that, he was tight end 9 with all those touchdowns. So I think he was kind of a touchdown dependent kind of guy. And again, I don't really see his upside. He's a little older now. Irv Smith could steal a lot more targets and snaps from him this coming season. While Irv Smith has that upside, I don't see the same upside as Rudolph. Probably going to be an undrafted guy. Not a It's pretty, reliable in a 16-man league tight end if you want to grab one late like that. But he doesn't really do it for me. He doesn't show that upset that I really like anymore in fantasy football. But, Irv Smith, I think, could really take over. And that's kind of why I keep on saying his name, because he's definitely someone to remember, keep your eyes on. So, but that is the end of my episode tonight, guys. Hope you enjoyed listening to it, as I always like talking about it. It's a lot of fun to do these things. So if you enjoyed it, please go back and watch my other ones. If you want to watch more, we'll be on tomorrow night once again talking about the Las Vegas Raiders and their great team and how they kind of turn out for this coming season. So I appreciate you guys all for listening. Take care. See you next time.